for your questions.
It was a great panel today. We rarely have an issue where both sides seem to agree on it. I think one suggestion would be if we were to do a bipartisan bill trying to fix this problem, that we constitute a working group, including the four members who have testified here today, since they probably have more experience in this issue than any members of Congress, any senators, or any of our staff. And if we had a working committee with these four and a few others, I think we would avoid the pitfall of having good intentions and then passing something that doesn't work, which is a pretty common occurrence in government. I think there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't work, but one of the fundamental things is the separation of power. And almost everything that we ever do here where we give an exemption to the executive to allow them to have the unilateral power, they use it. When it's well-intended, we say, well, you have to do this unless national security superimposes, but they always use that, and they will always have the incentive to use it. So we either have to have congressional power over funding or some sort of independent agency. I almost would imagine sort of like a federal judge or somebody that has judicial experience to sort of review these, but has the power to make the decision, you know, or if the executive makes a decision, it has to be appealed by Congress. Congress has to somehow be able to override, or somebody has to be able to override the presidential decision. Now, the question I had for Mr. Blanton was, you mentioned that there was a committee that was working, that was reviewing this. Was this just old documents over 25 years, or was this more recent documents? You mentioned some oversight committee that seemed to be working that was now backlogged.
The Interagency Security Classification Appeals Panel.
I don't know why I couldn't remember that.
Yeah, no wonder you couldn't. We call it ICECAP.
ICECAP,
because
okay.
It rules for the requester. And it got totally backlogged because it actually started ruling for the requester.
Was it old, over 25 years, or new?
Mandatory
newer
declassification review, so it can be new or old.
Okay.
New or old.
And it worked at first, but now it's overwhelmed because they have too much stuff.
Because the agencies didn't take those decisions and plug them back into the classification guides. There was no learning. So we had to fight those battles over and over and over, same battles.
So that could be part of the reform legislation,
Exactly.
is making sure that those decisions become a precedent for another decision,
Exactly.
another similar decision.
Exactly. And I just point back to your reference to the Moynihan Commission. The title of that commission was Protecting and Reducing Government Secrets. It sounds like contradiction. It's not. If you protect the real secrets, you got to disgorge the non-secrets.
I've been to hundreds of classified hearings and never heard anything classified, and most of the important stuff is already in the newspaper, and I read about the newspaper, and some of it's just ridiculous. The idea that the FBI and the Department of Energy have concluded that they think this, in all likelihood, came from the lab in Wuhan is not a secret. If you had somebody's name, that's a secret. I've never been to a hearing where I was told a name of a source or how somebody got something, and really, frankly, I don't want to know it for any possibility of that leaking. So there are real secrets that we have, but almost nothing that is classified is a real secret. Ms. Goitein, is that right? Close?
Goitein.
Goitein.
Thank you.
Mentioned in a written testimony that a wedding ceremony in Dagestani, cables from that were classified. You know what kind of robes they wore and what they did over this wedding ceremony. That's ridiculous. But I was told just yesterday by the Secretary of State, he will not give me any cables, and he will not give me any information that's unclassified, because the executive branch has unilaterally decided they will not give information unless a chairman of a committee signs off on it. So I have 4 or 5 chairmen I'm trying to get to sign records releases. They will not give any. But who made this decision? Not Congress, not the people. They made the decision to protect it. But this is the problem we have. I want to fix the classified problem, but even the unclassified information they're withholding from us. I want to see like government grants on people who applied for coronavirus research that were rejected, accepted, what the research proposal involved that involved the lab in Wuhan. I can't get it, because they deny this, and most of it's not supposed to be classified. So we have a real problem. It's even worse than that. Some committee chairman will say, like the head of Armed Services will say, we'll sign a request for this information, but it's not supposed to leave the committee. There's a report that they did in Help Committee, and I'm on both committees, and I wanted to bring it over here because I'm the ranking member. The Help Committee is preventing me from bringing that over so Senator Peters can see it. I mean, it's crazy, the segmentation of the things we do. But I think the best way to fix it is I really think it would be a great idea to have like a working group of people from the outside that would help us craft the information so we don't have the same pitfalls. What I'd hate is we do rubber stamp of something that looks good, sounds good, and doesn't work. And it really has to involve all of this. And so the reforms, you talked about having them learn from the precedents. Any other reforms, Mr. Eddington, that you would suggest?
You know, an awful lot of what my colleagues have already talked about, I think, is essential. But I'll just point to previous success stories. We've talked about a lot of failures here. But things happen when Congress decide they need to happen. So this is how we get the JFK records assassination material out, the Imperial-Japanese war crimes and Nazi war crimes records out. So this is stuff coming directly from the Congress. That's why in my written statement, I propose a national declassification bill, essentially, that would mandate essentially that anything that's 25 years old or older shall be essentially presumed to be unclassified unless there are very specific criteria that are met. Now, the criteria that I talk about are drawn from the existing executive order, 13526, but there are important words that are not in that executive order. Eliza has pointed to some of them. My favorite word is current. That word does not appear in there, so that's what gives NSA and others the ability to hang on to stuff for 50 years, 75 years, 100 years. So that's the number one thing. On the issue of congressional prerogatives, let's remember that the word secret only appears in the Constitution in one place. It's not Article 2. It's Article 1, Section 5, dealing with this body, Congress. Congress was the original classification authority. It let that power essentially slip away to the executive branch. And in my judgment, that's exactly the reason we have a problem. The last group of your colleagues who I think really understood this well were Senator Church, Senator Tower, and the others on the Church Committee, because when they were doing their report, they made it very clear to President Ford, we're going to listen to you when we tell you what we're going to include in this report, but the final word about what goes into our product, our committee report, that's us, that's Congress. That is exactly the standard you all need to return to. Do not turn your material, do not turn your reports over to the executive branch and let them tell you what is or is not classified. You are the original classification authority, and that's in the black letter text of the Constitution. Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications so every time I put out a video, you can know about it. It'll come up in your feed. Hit that like button if you liked it. And be positive. Peace.